Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for our latest episode of Corn Ferry Live. As always, we are here to talk about those topics that are having the biggest impact on business leaders like you, dissecting the hype and sharing insights aimed at empowering you all. Today, we're going to be talking about soft skills. We'll explain what they are and the critical role they play in both organizational success, but also your career success. The message the media is constantly blasting us with right now is that companies need workers with more skills or new skills, or we all need to be upskilling. What we really need are the right skills. But what are those? For example, we might think we all need people who can write a Gen AI prompt, when what we really need is more people with learning agility. One is labeled as a hard or vocational skill. The other is classified as a soft skill, harder to measure and maybe not easy to develop. So my first question to all of you out there, let's get involved please, is what do you think is more important for career success today? Is it soft skills or is it hard skills? Pop your answer in the chat right now. So while you're having to think about that, let's do some intros. I'm your host, Darren Bolton, Chief Creative Officer here at Corn Ferry, and today I'm joined by David Marzo, Global VP for Solution Design at Corn Ferry, and Tiffany Williams, Director of D&I for Corn Ferry's RPO business. Welcome both.
Thank you, Darren. Glad to be here.
Lovely to see you. Good to see you both. Right, now, I did warn you there's going to be a bit of an icebreaker question, so we're going to get stuck into that first. Now, I don't want you to think about this too seriously, be a bit spontaneous, maybe even have a little bit of fun. So, David, I'm going to start with you. So, Tiffany, you've got a little bit of time to think here, which is a bit of a cheat. If you could pick up a new skill in an instant, any skill, even a skill yet to be invented, what would it be and why, David?
Yeah, I think that skill would be something relative to Gen AI and really finding a way to really demystify what it is, what the opportunities are, and create a better future and better tomorrow because of that.
Brilliant. And Tiffany?
Oh my goodness. I'm going to actually be a little bit esoteric here. I pick up something around like clairvoyance, how to really be able to tap into what people are thinking about, to be able to get ahead of the curve and really be able to anticipate needs in a better way. Almost kind of like, what women want or what men want type of concept.
Brilliant. Love it. Yeah. I think I was on holiday recently and I was thinking, do you know what? I am always rubbish with languages. I would just love to be able to pick up the local language well and easily and be able to talk in that fluently, because that would be a real skill for me. Or my other secret skill I'd love to have is being able to talk to my kids and then to react and do what I say the first time rather than the 25th time. But hey, I think that's going to be impossible. Right, so we will crack on. A few minutes ago, we asked our audience what they felt was more important for career success. We talked about hard or soft skills. So let's start with you first, David. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, we are working with organizations on a daily basis, right, to bring some clarity and some strategic perspective to the whole concept of skills, right? It is the topic, the second most discussed topic behind AI and Gen AI. I think organizations are grappling with what that means, how to think about it through different talent processes. So within the firm, we have established a point of view and a perspective that, skills don't live in isolation, right? For us and the work that we do with clients, it's still about defining the core work that has to get done, right? And when you think about the disruption that's happening across a multitude of industries, right? Jobs are changing, the responsibilities associated with work is changing. Therefore, the skills are changing, right? But the expectations around soft skills as well, right? And we've always had a belief that as one progresses in their career, soft skills become increasingly important, right? In one's ability to succeed, navigate the organization, and drive impact. So we tend to look at this whole person, whole job model. It's not just skills, technical skills. It's not just competencies. It's looking at other factors around responsibilities, around personality and motivational factors that are important for the individual, but are tied to performance in that role. And we've got all the research to back that up.
Sure, great. And Tiffany, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Dave said. And, we know due to studies like Harvard, 85% of job success is due to soft skills, while 15% is due to hard skills. We know LinkedIn has a survey where it shows 9 out of 10 executives say soft skills matter more than hard skills. And I totally agree with that. And I think the reason why we're seeing that become increasingly important in terms of needing interpersonal skills is because it's needed in every environment that we exist in. It's needed for every type of work that is done. I also think we see this shift because as organizations move to being more cross-functional, right, having a cross-functional model, these skills will be critical to drive impact throughout the organization.
It's great. I can see, just got a little note here about some of the responses to the question we asked the audience. It seems to be like definitely a mixture of both, but maybe leaning towards soft more than hard. So not a lot of people are putting hard in isolation, which is probably a good thing. It seems like a lot of organizations, they're looking to create a much more inclusive culture. So how can empathy, greater communication, open-mindedness really contribute to that? So maybe Tiffany, you could take that one.
Yeah, sure. Well, I really love the conversation around soft skills because in the world of diversity, equity, and inclusion, interpersonal skills have always been foundational to the work, particularly because it's grounded in relationship building and collaboration. So practitioners, we often think of inclusion as the state of being, which means you must possess the mindsets and the interpersonal skills as part of how you operate. You'll often hear practitioners talk about using an inclusive lens to be able to drive the work that we do and have the impact that we desire. So when we think about some of the main principles of inclusion, such as respect and self-actualization and belonging, these skills around empathy and communication and open-mindedness. And I would actually also say critical thinking is a key component and intrinsically linked to reinforcing inclusive culture. If we take empathy, for an example, I love Brene Brown's definition of it, which is empathy is a way to connect to the emotion and to another person, right, is experiencing. Having empathy allows for various realities and perspectives to exist and not dismissing or minimizing that reality of others. So if we apply it to giving feedback, for instance, right, empathy can foster strong communication and even open-mindedness when we think about giving and receiving feedback. If we're able to understand and share the feelings of others, it allows us to prioritize our impact over our intent, which means that we are more likely to allow that person to feel seen and heard. And if we can articulate that, then that leads to one feeling respected and valued, and which are hallmarks of inclusivity and belonging.
Great. That's great.
Darren, could I just add to that if possible? And Tiffany, you alluded to it, but I guess some conversations I've had recently with a couple of clients around empathy, and that is, recognizing that the workforce has gone through a lot, right? From the pandemic to post-pandemic, you've got aging demographics, you've got a lot of people that are, attending and caring for elderly parents, right? I mean, I think, as leaders, right, just as people, leaders, and we got to think about the whole person and what that whole person is going through, right? And how to help them understand things that are concerning in the workforce, right? So you think about Gen AI, everyone's concerned, what part of my remit may be impacted by Gen AI, right? So I think just as leaders, we've got to err on the side of being more empathetic as opposed to less, to help people demystify some of the concerns that are front and center.
Great. And I think actually, that kind of like starts to answer the next question I was going to point to you, David, was can soft skills really play a critical role in tech and innovation? I don't know if you want to go into any more about that.
Yeah, I'd love to. Over the last 12, 14 months, I've had the benefit of talking to lots of CIOs, CTOs, right? And talking about the, broad-based transformations that are going on within their companies, right? IT transformations, digital transformations. And the one thing, we hear repeatedly is, I know I've got people that have the requisite technical skills. I know I've got people that can code. I might need to reskill and upskill in some areas, but generally what I'm missing are, leaders in my function, in my organization, right, that can interact with non-technical leaders, right? And manage stakeholders, balance stakeholders, better communication, right? Being able to talk in a non-technical speak. And so there's just a variety. I mean, things that came up where, I need our folks to be much more creative, think differently about problem solving and not having this fixed mindset. And that's a topic within the firm. Adaptability as we're going through these massive transformations, right? That are, multiple years in duration. Driving innovation, seems like an obvious one, right? But thinking about different ways for the organization to be successful. And then this sense of entrepreneurship, right? That we really should be challenging ourselves, right? If we're going to, in fact, start with a white piece of paper, what would we do differently than what we're doing today? So the feedback from lots of CIOs and CTOs is, soft skills are really important and probably, the biggest concern they have in terms of engaging effectively in and across the enterprise.
Love that. We've got a few comments in the chat, actually, which I think the team are going to... Oh, lovely. This one from Michael. Hard skills open doors, soft skills create opportunity. Love that. That's great. Another one here, LinkedIn user. Hard skills are necessary to complete work accurately, and soft skills will be necessary to deliver work results. So it seems like we're on the same page, which is a good start. This one's from Jonathan. Is the name soft skills? Oh, this is interesting. I was thinking of asking this. Is the name soft skills right? It feels insignificant, less important. Do we feel it needs a upgrade in its title? Any thoughts on that, team?
Tiffany?
Yeah, I've always had a problem with the term soft skills because, it does give off this connotation that it is less than. Soft skills are just interpersonal skills. It is the way that we navigate and deal with people and build relationships and maneuver throughout life in the workplace, outside of the workplace, in your communities. So to call it soft skills really kind of denotes the less importance of it. Really, interpersonal skills is the language that I typically use.
Yeah. That kind of brings me on to the next question, because I was going to say, actually, it seems the idea potentially of soft skills might seem a bit fluffy or maybe even subjective. So can you assess soft skills and can you actually measure them, David?
We believe you can and you should, from the perspective of, these soft skills, right? And, related competencies, right? Behavioral competencies, are often the thread, right, to which many talent acquisition, talent management activities occur, right, and creates that connective tissue, as some clients call it, create the operating system, as other clients call it, right. So I think understanding what's important for a given role that is aligned to an index to performance in a given role is important, right. I mean, that's the first point of insight. Then I think the second is the assessment, right? Now, depending on the use case, right? If you're talking about performance, you're talking about a multi-rater 360 type instrument, right? To get rounded feedback. If you're talking about, talent acquisition or development, a self-assessment will do just fine, right? And so we do a lot of work with clients. I think the reality is the insight from assessment, for all of us, right, that go through various processes, right, gives us much more informed perspective around our strengths, around our weaknesses, and I would argue around our blind spots, right? And by that, I mean, I think I'm, particularly good in a given area, but yet people that interact with me all the time don't see it that way. And I'm likely to continue to use what I perceive as a strength when others perceive it as a weakness. We call that in Korn Ferry terms a blind spot. And you wouldn't get that, but through some form of assessment.
Yeah, great. Tiffany, want to add or good? Move on?
Yeah, no, I think everything that David is mentioning is spot on. The only things that I would add to that is in around informal assessments, right? When you're not going through maybe performance reviews, or if it's through the candidate pipeline in the beginning of the application stage. Other informal ways are around observations and role plays and scenarios, providing work samples, ways for people to really demonstrate the breadth and depth of how they show up to be able to do that. But I think it's really important for people to remember that, there almost has to be strategy around understanding what are the values around those soft skills, those interpersonal skills that you actually hold, because in those values, that's how you're going to understand what characteristics a person needs to be able to exhibit when you're assessing those skills.
Gotcha. We have another question from our lively audience today. It's from Kathy. So what role do leaders play in fostering a culture that values and prioritizes soft skills development within their teams? I don't know who wants to take that one on.
I'm happy to. I think we probably have a shared opinion on this, but I think the frontline leaders.
You can start.
Yeah, I think the frontline leaders play a really important role, right? To understand what's important for a given role, and then to create this ongoing, sustained focus on developing those skills, right? I think early on, when I looked at people managing new college grads and early professionals, there's that over-indexing on technical skills, right? That get work done, and I think over time, people become accustomed to that focus and fixation on technical skills at the risk of what we're talking about here today, soft skills, for lack of a better word. I too, like Tiffany, believe that soft skills tends to get dismissed, right, as something that's not directly related to a role, the execution of a role, and performance in a role. And so I think we've got to find a better reference for that. Because we've done all types of studies within the firm, many of them published around, not only the importance, but the impact.
Yeah, great. Tiffany?
Yeah, and in terms of leaders helping to foster that, I really think it's important for leaders to really first assess and understand their own leadership styles, right? How they show up, their attributes, their characteristics around the same skill sets, right? Because in order to be able to lead others, you have to really be able to understand the way to be led as well. So thinking around how leaders are going to create those development opportunities or create pathways for their employees is going to be really important. And it also leans into how do you support building and shepherding inclusive cultures, right? Inclusive leadership and those skill sets and those attributes are really leaning into the traits of an inclusive leader. So how do you leverage those to be able to build relationships, to provide that communication, that empathy, and shepherd your organization?
That's great. This is a bit of a sidetrack question, but I was talking to some friends at the weekend. We obviously see a lot of organizations right now talking about soft skills, and the media also are picking up on it. And it does seem to make a lot of sense. But the weird thing was, when I was talking to my mates, they were kind of a bit cynical about whether or not organizations are talking a good talk, but not necessarily walking a good walk. And I think this is a bit of a question to you two, but also our audience as well, about, are we seeing the organizations actually delivering on what they're saying, or are they really it's just about talking about it? And it's not just the big top 5 or the big top 20. Are we seeing organizations as a whole embracing this more than we thought? And maybe in the chat, you can put talk if you think it's all talk, or walk if you think they're actually walking the walk, where you are, or any organizations you're hearing about. But for Tiffany and David, how do you feel? Is this filtering down through the organization? It's not just kind of like a great poster child for saying we're doing the right things.
Tiffany?
I think it is starting to make more of an emergence, right? I think as we see shifts in the economy, we see shifts in the workplace, we see what happened in talent acquisition trends. I think organizations will start to catch on and build. Same with the move to upskilling and reskilling and creating internal programs, because we need to be able to meet the demands of the workforce. So that same concept is going to take place. And to be honest with you, it's no no different really than how we think about diversity, equity, inclusion, the shift, right? Is it all talk, or do you really mean that? And the way that we will know organizations mean that is when they embed in their infrastructure. If it is not part of your process, if it's not formalized, if you are not having open, transparent conversations around it, if you are not using tools like Dave mentioned in terms of assessment, then it tends to be all talk. And the other thing about assessing is really making it objective and not subjective. So the part is, if we leave it to the informal evaluations or the nice to haves, the preferreds versus the requireds, then we remain subjective. And ultimately that can lead to exclusion on a variety of levels, right? So I really think organizations are really starting to stop and think about how they're moving from a transactional type of environment and being more relationship based, and understanding the power of human connection and collaboration, and what are the skills that are going to be needed now and in the future to be able to drive that success.
Great. David, anything you want to add? Or?
Yeah, just briefly, I would say two things. One, I think the disruption going on in a lot of industries has created a bit of a forcing function for clients to rethink this, right? In the sense of needing more agility, right? More adaptability in the organizations, right? In companies that have gone through restructuring, you've got a lot of people that may not be fully trained to be in the role. That requires learning agility, right? And drawing upon past experiences to figure out what is needed to address the current, right? So I think some of it has been disruption, some of it's been some of the economic headwinds that organizations have gone through. I think we see organizations across the continuum of maturity. But at the end of the day, for this to be sustained requires a leadership commitment in action behind it. And if that's not there, like a lot of change initiatives, it will peak pretty quickly.
Yeah. So we've already said that we can assess and measure soft skills, which is great, but can they actually be taught? Tiffany, I don't know if you want to take this one.
Yeah, I actually believe that they can. And basically, I kind of take maybe a non-traditional approach to thinking around interpersonal skills. The first thing is self-awareness. And I believe a level of vulnerability are key to being able to learn any new skill. And, I always think about DE&I work, right? A lot of capacity building, a lot of education is actually really around building self-awareness and understanding our intrapersonal world, right? So how we operate, how we're socialized, how we relate to self and others, those aspects are really key, and it's grounded in building that emotional intelligence that's needed to be able to navigate the world, right? And it fosters a lot of the soft skills that we've already spoken about today. So taking self-assessments, personality tests, cultural competency assessments is really key as well. And I would even go as far as saying understanding your attachment style. I know that might be very more psychology, sociology bound, but understanding your attachment style and other aspects of your identity really does support your ability to build or sharpen your interpersonal skills and apply them both in the workplace and in life in general.
We are running out of time, but I'm going to squeeze, I've been told we haven't got time, but I'm going to squeeze a question in from our audience because I want to embrace them all. So we've got one here from Hemant. Isn't it a little harder to practice soft skills in today's post-COVID or remote work world? Any tips this panel could share to help us be more effective, even across screens or virtually? So who wants to go first? And we're just going to let one of you answer.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I would take that as an opportunity, right? That, what we do virtually creates a almost immersive experience, right? And actually highlights the importance of certain, soft skills, right? So rather than that being a challenge or a problem, I almost look at it as an opportunity for us to do things differently, which again places a premium on a lot of the topics that we talked about today.
That's great. So as always, we've run out of time. We always do this. It's always a bit of a rush at the end, but we do like to leave our audience with a closing thought, ideally something they can really kind of put into action. So who would like to go first?
Tiffany?
Oh, thanks, Dave. Yeah, my only closing thought is that, soft skills or interpersonal skills are something that we are always evolving and learning. The workplaces, and we're always adapting in these environments. Always be willing to be agile, right? Having a curiosity to learn and to adopt new skills to add to your toolbox. But just remember to give yourself grace as we do this, because adopting new skills is not easy. To the point, it can take a long time. It can be hard. So just give yourself grace as you continue on the journey in building your toolbox.
Lovely, great. And David?
Yeah, very quickly, when people talk about skills, don't forget the work that has to get done, right? When you're thinking about skills, right? Or, in any form. And then finally, as we talked about, being able to assess, exposes you, right, to where you might have some blind spots, right? Where we all have opportunities to develop and embrace that.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you very much, both of you. It's been great having you here today. Hopefully see you again soon. But farewell. Goodbye.
Aaron.
See you, Tiffany.
Bye, David.
And a big thank you to you all for joining us today, as always. And if you'd like to discover more insights into the area of skills, there should be a link in the chat right now. So please connect to that. But I'm afraid is it for today. I'm off to pick up a language or three for our next episode. So for now, it's goodbye.